Welcome to Conversations, a special podcast with Reverend Laura Derr. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here.
Well, you have a very special book about your relationship with Christ consciousness. Your book is Journey to the True Self, Intimate Conversations with Christ Consciousness. Tell us about the book and how it came to be written.
It has been a long journey. Um, I had no idea at the beginning of the journey that this is where it would end. And so I also trust that I don't need to know where my journey is continuing because the fruits have already been miraculous beyond anything I could ever possibly have anticipated. So the book tells a synopsis of my spiritual journey. I'll start with saying that as a child, I felt a strong heart connection to what we called Jesus, but I call by his Aramaic name, Yeshua. I could feel him in my heart. And there's a particular phrase that always stuck with me, which is, I will be with you until the end of the age. And I even feel tearful saying those words. Really, really spoke to me, still speaks to me. And this book is a manifestation of that promise of him being with me and with all of us faithfully until the end of the age of illusion. So that was maybe the first step. Fast forward to in my 20s, I fell in with some friends who were into mystical learning, and I got really good at tarot cards and fascinated by sort of intuitive astrology. And I would have lots of intuitive flashes. So I was beginning to honor that I had another way of knowing that was valid. Um, and then I went through 20 years of devoted Buddhist practice in the Thich Nhat Hanh community, which taught me many, many, many things, but really the focus of being present, paying attention to everything about life. Everything about life has value. And then I found the Course in Miracles, and I developed a practice of journaling questions to the Holy Spirit and receiving answers. So the intuitive flashes grew into something much more in depth and complex. I could tell it was a different quality of thought than my normal, everyday, rational or emotional mind. Um, I was able to hear not actively words, but a felt sense of knowing the thought. And I would just write down what I was thinking. I did not know where the sentence would go. So that was many years of that practice. And I credit that with really tuning up my ability to listen inwardly and trust what's coming next without having to have an idea of it first.
One thing I've known about you for the last 10 years is that when you get involved with something, it's not an intellectual exercise. You totally immerse yourself, whether living in the Plum community with Thich Nhat Hanh or any aspect of your spiritual awareness and development. You're all in on that. It's a very heart mind approach to that, and I'm looking forward to hearing maybe even a passage from the book that could help us get into that same spirit that you bring to the book.
Thank you very much. Yes, I have always been very emotionally devoted to the spiritual path. I've known from the beginning of my life that that's the only thing that really matters. So, besides inner hearing, I also developed the capacity to trust my inner sight. I used to think my mind was wandering and I would just see various images, but I came to learn that they were actually accurate information. The story that's in the book, I was doing a reading for a man and I kept seeing a woman holding a newborn infant that had nothing to do with what I was telling him about his current life. And I did not know this man. He was a friend of a friend. And I reported that to him at the end. And I said, I have no idea what this means. And he said, oh, that's my mother. She comes through every reading I have. She gave me away at birth. This was a much older gentleman. So he was born at a time a mother being not married was terrible. And she had to give him away. He said, she comes through every reading to reassure me that she loves me. So that was beautiful for him, but it taught me to trust that my mind was not wandering, but I was given accurate information. So then I practiced doing these, I just called them intuitive readings for people, all completely different, fascinating information. And often healing energy would come through my hands and people's physical symptoms would resolve. There's a story in the book about working with Magdalene and seeing cancer cells being removed from a woman's body. And she remains cancer-free. I did not know that she had had cancer. This was nothing rational.
And that's Mary Magdalene, just for the audience.
Yes, Mary Magdalene. Thank you. Anyway, so a friend of mine said, you know, Laura, doing hands-on healing is not acceptable for clinical psychologists, which is earned my living profession. You should get ordained as a minister. And I agreed with her. So I plunged into the 1-year intensive All Faiths Seminary International program in New York City and ended up with an ordination as an interfaith minister, which is how I met you, John, because you were also graduating from the seminary with your doctorate at the same time. So that's how that evolved. This specific moment when I began hearing Yeshua's voice, it had started out as hearing laughter. And I always knew that was his voice when I could hear laughter. But I had this intuitive, complex intuitive vision, I'll just say, with a friend of mine who features in the book as my energetic co-transmitter, you might say. I could see a past life of his extremely clearly. We were on Skype, that was before Zoom took over the world, and expressing gratitude. And I just started saying, oh, I see Yeshua in front of me, and he's transmitting light, and he's telling me this. And my friend John, not this John, had recorded it. And we were both so compelled by that, we joined together again and asked Yeshua to come through again. Immediately, it happened. Other friends heard about it. And from there, it just gathered speed. And for almost 3 years, I would have regular gatherings online, and teachings would come through, and people would ask questions and answers would be given. So that's the other content of the book, my story, and then those teachings.
And the time frame that these began, do you put a date as to this dialogue?
Yes, it first started in October of 2018. I had received ordination in 2016, and I had to stop in the middle of the pandemic in 2021. As a psychologist, I was simply exhausted. Working so many hours with so many people in distress. And then my mother was ill, and then I moved. And so I'm getting ready to come back.
Well, one of the elements of this that I think it's important for me to take in, and for those listening to this, is that as a clinical psychologist, there's very clear boundaries between your experience and what's going on with you and what's happening with the patient. You have to put yourself somehow in another space to be processed at another time, but certainly not with the person that you're supporting. Here, what I was hearing and listening to is that the very information of the teaching is meant at least as much for the transmitter, the teacher, so to speak, as it is for those that's receiving it. And that's a very important distinction for anyone that is both listening to your book or any true teaching. If the teacher and transmitter is not growing, I would put that into question. I think it needs is an equal opportunity employer, and that comes across in your book really, really well. Would you like to read something from the book to get us into the flavor of your book?
I want to respond first with saying my cat Cricket features in the book because he was ill and then died during the beginning of this transmission process. And his death was, I'm going to cry, was this enormous spiritual teaching about love and the non-reality of death. And going through it viscerally really brought that awareness into vivid clarity for me. So these are not just ideas that I'm transmitting. So I'm grateful that you bring that out. It's very, and putting the book together was also a learning process of going through all the teachings again and receiving again how profound they are. What was this experience like for me? Learning to hear and express the consciousness of Yeshua was a profound and intense process. I remember sitting in a concert, looking at the sea of people and thinking, if they knew I was hearing and speaking the words of Yeshua and transmitting his energies, they would think I was insane. But the more I engaged with him, the more comfortable I became. Yeshua's first teaching to me and John Hempstead was about not being special. When he anointed us with an oil made of liquid light, he was extremely clear that it did not make us special. Rather, it was so we could go on and anoint others. The thought of specialness only reinforces the thought of separation. And I could not continue serving as his voice if I thought that made me special. For many months, this felt like an unsolvable paradox, but his repeated teachings that we share the same soul, the same self, were so helpful to me in learning to allow this transmission to occur and not make it about my personal self. Then there was the energetic experience. For many months during these channeled sessions, it was all I could do to tolerate the intensity of the vibration in which I was immersed. Sometimes I felt Yeshua like a larger energetic body that formed a layer around me and that also penetrated me completely. In this way, he could transmit information about his own experiences, such as meditating in the desert. Often I had to sit gripping my knees to keep myself steady, while my speaking voice carried calmly on, revealing no indication of my intense internal experience. Of course, knowing what I was experiencing, Yeshua would encourage me to stay with him. As he was speaking, my own habitual level of consciousness continued on, fully engaged, often making an inner commentary about the words being said, such as, I have no idea where this is going. How will I know what to say next? Or this sentence is so long, I'm losing track of where it's going. But more often, the inner commentary was about my credibility or worthiness as their speaker. Then, when the session of transmitting the words and energetics was complete, I would simply return to my habitual level of consciousness.
Thank you. One of the elements in reading your book a number of times is that there is both a stream of consciousness, a transmission quality to it, which is to some extent free form, but there's an orderliness to this as well. As you were saying that, you wouldn't necessarily know what was going to be said, but yet it does. The Christ consciousness knows that. And I was brought into that. It was, I won't quite call it like Bach, but there was an orderliness to your book, a structure to the book. Could you tell me how you came to get the book in the form that it was? Was that a transmission that say, well, this is the way you do the book? Or how did you organize the book for us to sit down at this banquet, this great spiritual banquet?
I organized it the same way I do the transmissions, which is one step at a time. Flashes of, oh, this is how it should be. Oh, okay, then I should do that. Oh, well, then I'll do that. Oh, and then somebody suggests this. Oh, okay, I should do that. So it was a completely intuitive, organic process. It became clear that my story needed to be included to encourage people to continue on their own path and not, I had originally thought, oh, I'm publishing the transmissions. It's not about me. But it became clear that if the reader can see that this is possible for me, then it's possible for other people to continue on your path and have spiritual revelation. And then I I had to find my old computer that wasn't working and pull out the documents of every session, all the transcriptions, going through emails, putting it all. It was like a mosaic of putting all the pieces together. And I realized I had way more material than I had any idea of. This book is already many hundreds of pages and it's about a quarter of the material. There's much, much more.
Well, when I sit down at a concert with friends or just by myself, I often read the liner notes. I'll read a little bit about the background, which is helpful. But then if to really appreciate the music, in this case, to appreciate your book, I have to put myself allow myself, I should say, really, to become the music, to be open to the music like a child, to open this mind, to just be present and listen to the conductor conducting the music or the musicians playing. How would you invite people into your book? What would be any suggestions that you might have? Are there certain passages? How would you invite people to prepare to enter into this Christ consciousness field?
I have a note to the reader at the beginning that addresses that. The guidance is to feel the words in your heart and not try to understand them intellectually. Um, I have received the feedback from several people that that energetic experience is quite real reading the book. People do experience letting go of their rational mind and experience the unity consciousness that is love, that is God. The words are that beautiful. They welcome the reader into the exquisite pattern of beauty that is the nature of creation.
Some of the aspects to me of the book speak to a whole new way of being in the world. It's like a new world being created. There are a couple of chapters, a couple of passages that spoke to me about this new planet, this new way of being. Would you like to share something from that, one of those chapters?
Okay. Um, Part of the story of the book is that by spontaneous miracle, many people in my community of friends just so happened to plan to go to Scotland at the exact same time. This was not a coordinated uh, gathering at all. Once we realized that this was already happening, that we'd all been given the message to go to Scotland on the summer solstice, then we became intentional and found a place to stay and went to the tiny little town of Fortingall, where there is a yew tree that is so many thousands of years old that it's really not possible to know, because yew trees sort of keep morphing and the same being takes different shape, but it's still the same tree. So we gathered there, and transmission came through about that gathering marking an opening into the energy of the new creation, which has been building. Many people have been receiving transmissions about the new creation. This gathering was a gateway into the new creation.
Well, one of the things that really spoke to me in that the safety of the new creation, that was that particular passageway, is that there is this transition that individually we have always had the opportunity to participate in. Yeshua totally manifested is the letting go of the ego self and allowing the higher self, the true self, in terms of your book, to manifest itself. You can call it the Christ consciousness if that is your interest, but it's also about the energy body as well. That the physical body is a projection of the ego, but part of the resurrection mystery is about letting the light body come in, and that to me spoke to me very personally. And there's a passage that I'd like to read, if, with your permission, about that, because that's where I find the safety, in terms of what in great comfort. It's a quote from your book. Let's see, page 256 for those that would like to reference it. Okay. Yes, I'd like to hear more about the perfect light body. You have taught that the connection of Christ mind to ego body physicality is evolving, and at some point the soul, the mind as the Christ mind, and the body will be one. It sounds to me like it's the light body that becomes one with the Christ mind and the soul. I'd love to hear about that. And the response that came through is, yes, you have understood that I manifested this by showing that my body was light in what is called the resurrection. I demonstrated that it is the light body that is one with the soul. The physical body was transmuted into the light body because the physical body has no separate existence. It is not a separate thing which the soul inhabits. It is actually a projection of the soul, and the soul's only material to work with, so to speak, is light. So ultimately, yes, all bodies will become perfected as light. They will not become perfected as physical bodies. You know, in just hearing about cricket, and just that moves me too. I had some little experience with cricket, and certainly other cats. The physical body just transition, but what it gives me great comfort to feel, yes, this essence continues, not just in some sort of abstract wah wah way, but as as the substance of the universe. That is the substance of the universe. And coming to know that and experience that is what I have taken as a really important aspect of your journey to the true self is. How has that changed you in your journey?
Knowing that everything is light and consciousness and love, those are all the same. The universe is conscious. The universe is love. It was very powerful listening to you read those words coming back to me, so to speak. Oh, those are beautiful teachings, and I'm so honored to be the vehicle for them. So thank you for feeding them to me and our listeners. It is challenging to walk around in a body with an apparently separated consciousness, knowing that the body is a vibrational pattern of light that is made purely of loving consciousness. There is nothing else. That is a knowing that is more than intellectual for me at this moment. I do not live it every single moment of every day. I know that that description I just said might be a description of what's called enlightenment, when the personality dissolves and what's left is the awareness of the universality of what we call God. And I have had moments like that. I do notice that in receiving positive feedback about the book, I do not have an egoic reaction to how special I am that I wrote this book. I have a reaction of gratitude that the words and transmissions are touching people. So I can say that I live in a place of not valuing a separate personality. I can't say that I never react out of my separate personality. I certainly do sometimes.
Well, I really enjoyed. I mean, it was very moving to me to about grief and the light body, chapter 15, where you really speak to this. And it's not like you come out the other end with the realization. It will work in progress. But knowing that it's true, again, that for me is important to have that sense that this is real, the ultimate reality, that it does touch us in very personal ways in our growth, but also in our hardest moments, because that's often when we become most vulnerable. We are open to something else. And it's a very big something else. And it's something else as part of a community. I'd like to ask you about how this is helping you find community, whether you were part of the community in Thich Nhat Hanh and the Plum community, certainly probably still connected to the Course in Miracles group and your own spiritual groups. How is this informed and supported and helped finding community and being part of community?
What's fascinating for me about this experience is that the transmissions only come through in community.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are people like Mari Perrin who sit quietly. She has a writing shed. She sits quietly and receives transmissions and writes them down, and they're gorgeous, clear, accurate teachings. My experience is that this only comes through while joining with other people. that in and of itself is really important teaching, that the Christ consciousness is universal. It is in communion. It is an experience of simultaneously being personally aware and being in the universality of love. And the egoic, separated mind has a very hard time understanding that. So it's very hard to explain, knowing that I am aware and I am also in communion with other souls simultaneously. That is the nature of reality. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, it does. No,
So it isn't about finding community. It is that these teachings come through community.
that's a very good answer. One of the most important anchoring points of community here is certainly Yeshua, Mother Mary, and Miriam of Magdala. That it's a very important one for you, but also for the reader. It's a very important context to understand the book. I was led to a Water Sacred to the Mother. It was a page 411 where you're really around Glastonbury Abbey, a site of a Druidic community and the Essene community, uh, and Joseph of Arimathea. Tell me about your experience on High Tor and Avalon and the very Wells Cathedral.
My mother's grandfather comes from a little village outside of Bath. So I have a feeling of ancestral connection to that area. We went to visit, we have second cousins. We went there when I was maybe 12 and visited the cathedral in Wells. And I have to say, it was almost an out of body feeling of ecstasy being in that cathedral. The beauty of the scissor arches, the spaciousness, I just loved it. And every time I have the privilege of going back, I have to go to Wells. There are actual wells behind the cathedral that are actually springs that are gushing water. I mean, there are these huge pools of water that come down from the Mendip Hills. And it's very clear that this has been a mystery school of women who are representations of the goddess on earth, part of the Druidic tradition. So there's enormous spiritual power in that area. For people who don't know the geography, Wells is very close to Glastonbury. They're just a 15-minute drive away from each other. There is a smaller spring in Glastonbury Abbey that's also sacred to the mother. And that spring has very powerful energetics. And this is where it's said that Joseph of Arimathea and his community built the first, what you might call Christian church after the resurrection. They gathered there and built a little wooden house together and practice this new higher consciousness that had been taught to them. So I love it there.
Did you find yourself both there or in your journeys? It's not imagining, remembering, really, remembering. A good word there, actually, remembering that you would be able to be joined in that communion with that community. Do you have personal experiences you'd like to share about either the Essene community, a Druidic community, or anything like that?
So one of the lovely things about joining with these friends on the path is that all of us have various past life memories of being in the Druidic world, in the Essene world. I would say, or the Cathars. Those are spiritual traditions that we have woven in and out of through lifetimes. Being at Wells, it was really clear to me that I was one of those teachers at the Wells, which is why I had such an emotional reaction as a young child. My Essene connection has come into, I knew I was in that community and that I had been in Yeshua's presence. I just wasn't sure what it was because it was so powerful. But what has come clear is that I was quite a bit older than he was, and I was also a teacher in that community, teaching chanting and dancing and herbal healing. Um, Speaking of herbal healing, when I was in the fourth grade, I found a book about native medicinal plants and went down into the woods at the end of my street looking for them and did a presentation to my class. So clearly, this is a long connection of me and medicinal plants. So I, as an older woman in the Essene community, I was in a support role, not in a direct interacting with the master role, though I did have some interactions when he would come to visit our community where we lived together. And mostly what I remember is him focusing on the children.
So one of the things that really came across in your book that really spoke to me personally was the place of gratitude in maintaining the connection with this Christ consciousness. In fact, on page, let's see, look at 436, there's a particular passage around gratitude opens the way of harmony when heaven manifests on earth. May I read from that, Laura?
Yes.
Okay. An even larger group of friends, about 16 of us, hired a wonderful Scottish guide named Chris Peterson, who spent the day with us introducing us to all the mystical aspects of the Rosslyn Chapel and the Druidic landscape around the town of Rosslyn. I was living at that time in the neighborhood of Boston called Roslindale, so it was a delight for me to learn of the wonders of its namesake town. He brought us to a cave known to have been used in Druidic mysteries to experience the divine feminine. The group asked me to give voice to Christ consciousness in that cave where we were all gathered on June 25, 2019. One brother declares, we call the ancestors the guardians of this land in gratitude for allowing us to ceremony on their land. Just continue breathing and turn your inner dial to receive. He then chants the Lord's Prayer in Aramaic. The group all joins in singing Amen. We recite our prayer of alignment 3 times. In the name of the Mother, Father, God, in the name of the Son, the daughter, the child of God, in the name of the Holy Spirit, Sophia, Shem, in the name of the Lord Christ, I am. That speaks to me so much about the importance of preparation, but also of gratitude. It seems that all aspects of your work have a gratitude dimension to us. Would you like to share anything about that in terms of the importance for all of us?
That's how it all started. The whole transmission started when I was expressing gratitude to my friend John Hempstead about the miraculousness of having had this very clear vision of the life he just came from before this one in a very specific location in Ireland, going to Ireland, and local people helping us identify the exact spot, finding that spot. There was a replica of what I had seen in my inner vision. I have never been there in this life or in any other. And we were expressing gratitude for the miraculousness of all of that. And that is when Yeshua first appeared in my mind's eye, in the warm bath of gratitude for the miraculous, the miracle of the spiritual reality of life.
Well, thank
It's
you so much.
everything.
Oh, it is everything. Is there anything more that you'd like to share with us as we come to the end of this podcast?
You had asked a while back if I would read a passage of the new creation. And I was explaining that the group had gathered in Fortingall. And here's the passage that I was going to read at that time. From this day forward, you will express the creative power of God in ways heretofore unknown to yourselves. Rest assured, you will always be guided in this process. This new creation is new, so it cannot be something you can expect in terms of it being something familiar, but you can expect it in terms of the promise that the new creation is at hand. You are the child of God, like unto the Creator in every way. The Creator bestowed upon us all at our creation the same powers as herself. In this time, humanity is becoming aware of those powers. We have said to you before that if you became aware of those powers all at once, it would feel overwhelming. So you have been experiencing them in stages. Being willing to follow guidance and experience miracles is one way to help you know you are on the path to experiencing even greater powers. And I would also like to read a passage about the Alpha and the Omega. And I remember when these words came through me, I was startled because they felt so biblical. I was thinking of all the symbols of alphas and omegas carved on altars, and the Christ being the Alpha and the Omega, and these words came through. John Hempstead is asking about, can you say something about Laura's face glowing as she speaks your words? It is just radiant. And the response is, how can Laura's face not be glowing when she rests in trusting that I, who know who I am and am awake, am residing in her, around her, through her, above, below, to the left, to the right, ahead, and behind. I am the all in all. When all of you have let go of any feeling of specialness and separation, you too will know that you are the all in all. That is what is meant when I say, I am the Alpha and the Omega. So too are you the Alpha and the Omega. You are the beginning and the end. In the beginning is God, and God extends herself so she can have a traveling companion. There is no end. There is only the end of illusion. There is only the end of the traveling companion believing that he was separated. That is what I mean when I say I am the Alpha and the Omega. I simply know this. You too will come to know this. I am not the only one who is the Alpha and the Omega. The child of God is one collective consciousness, and all parts that seem to be separated will come to know they are the Alpha and the Omega.
So this is coming to the end of this podcast, but it's also a new beginning. Tell us how we could purchase the book, participate potentially in workshops and things like that, Laura.
I have a beautiful website that has a link to buy the book. It will also announce when I will be doing workshops. They will be in various formats, half day, full day, and eventually weekend. I did just do 2 full day workshops with my friend Ned Arvidson, who is a wonderful Course in Miracles teacher. So we will be doing more of that.
Well, I look forward to that. Laura, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've known you for many years during this journey. I'm grateful to be a small part of that. And I am looking very much forward to the workshops that you have. So until next time, this is Conversations with John Krysko. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for having me.